before the election, it was a question as to whether we would get a $2 trillion aid package that Pelosi and the Democrats are pushing for, or a $1.8 trillion aid package that the White House was pushing for. And they kept negotiating and nothing happened. And now it's post-election time. And it looks like they might have landed on half of the lowball bid. $908 billion in COVID aid, which is not a lot of money. So to really capture a soul-crushing aspect of it, here is the latest news as announced by Fox Business. Take a look.
Well, Joe Biden is throwing support behind a bipartisan $908 billion COVID relief package. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell saying compromise is within reach. Even President Trump says it's close. So is this package more important than just ending the lockdowns? And I don't mean to be rude about this, but when and how will we pay the bills?
Jesus.
There. Good Christ. I not be rude here. I mean, I wasn't rude. We were giving trillions in tax cuts to the people who watch my show, but I'm going to pay for this thing. And, I don't know. So Biden's behind it. Pelosi's behind it. What's in it? Here is a Lauren Egan from NBC News writes, their support renews hope that the Congress could approve aid before the end of the year. This is Pelosi and Schumer's support. The proposal would provide an extra $300 a week in unemployment payments and extend help to cash-strapped local governments, as well as provide support for small business, transit systems, and airlines. What's not in it? The plan does not renew the federal moratorium on evictions that's set to expire at the end of the year. A second round of $1,200 stimulus checks, although supported by congressional Democrats and the president of the United States, is also not included in the bipartisan framework. Democrats push for hazard pay, which could provide bonuses to essential workers and healthcare professionals who have put their lives in danger during the pandemic, was also excluded from the plan. Or if you like a more visual representation from Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley, COVID relief bill does not include enhanced unemployment benefits, workplace protections, paid sick leave, direct cash payments to individuals, national eviction and foreclosure moratorium, rental assistance fails to meet the scale and scope of the crisis we're facing. So Nando, what are your thoughts?
I mean, obviously, like it's just unbelievably bleak and depressing, because the scale of this crisis is almost like impossible to wrap your mind around. Just like the scale of the economic harm is going to be with us for the next decade or even more, and just the complete and utter failure of our leadership class to deal with something like this is going to have political reverberations that we just can't foresee right now. The Democrats gave away their leverage when they passed the CARES Act. I mean, that's just the bottom line of the Republic. Mitch McConnell has no incentive to pass any of this. I mean, Trump had an incentive because he needed to win the election, and there seems pretty clear to me that the stimulus that he passed in the summer probably helped him a lot politically. It's probably why he did better than people expected. But when the Democrats kind of passed the CARES Act and they didn't tie it to certain health indicators, and it just ended in August, essentially, the Republicans got everything they wanted. They got the massive transfer to corporations. They got the bailout. They got the $4 trillion to corporations. Mitch McConnell would like a 5-year protection for all corporations for liability from coronavirus. He'd like that, but he's fine not giving any stimulus if he doesn't need to. So even if this bipartisan deal was kind of embraced by the president, like I just don't see why Mitch McConnell was not a part of the problem solvers caucus who hatched this bipartisan compromise. So he's going to compromise on the compromise. It's going to end up being like an absolute pittance that will just, I mean, it might there might be some appropriations for like actually developing and distributing the vaccine. But in terms of economic relief to people, to real struggling people who have no way of working because the economy is basically stopped, they're not gonna, it's just not gonna happen. It's just not gonna happen.
And like state governments are faced with this decision. Like last time they did do some form of lockdown, and it did stem the spread of this disease. Right. That's what the dip was after it began. Like, they did it, and they're gonna have to do it again. The only difference is now there isn't gonna be that lifeline about those liability protections. Also from Lauren Egan at NBC News, the proposal includes liability protections for businesses that remain open during the pandemic, a provision that has been a non-starter for Pelosi and Schumer in the past.
Yeah. It's a license to kill, and essentially, like, for a business, you could just, like, flaunt every single COVID regulation, safety measure for their workers, and if the worker gets sick and dies, like, they're not liable in any way. But yeah, I mean, the state, I mean, I almost feel bad for someone like Gavin Newsom, who I, despise on almost every level. But, I almost feel bad for him because, he's seeing the numbers and he wants to, like, I probably know that in his bones, he knows he wants to lock down. But without any federal aid, a state can't run a deficit. So shutting down the economy means that the state revenues get starved, and he has to, like, fire millions of teachers and police officers and firefighters. Like, it's like, it's an impossible choice in many ways. And without the federal aid, like, the governors, like, are really under the gun because they're really between a rock and a hard place. It's just our insane system in which states can't run deficits, in which only the federal government can run a deficit, yet states are empowered to make all these decisions. Like, it just shows, like, just how broken and dysfunctional our system is at almost every level, and just how ill-equipped our leaders are, and unwilling and just brazenly, like, sociopathically willing to let hundreds of thousands of people die because they keep on asking the question, but how are we going to pay for it?
Thanks for watching the Young Turks. We really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.